14 أذار حتى نحقق الحرية التي ننشدها جميعا.
Good afternoon. It is Friday, March 22nd. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's headlines. The death toll from 3 days of fighting in the northern city of Tripoli rises to 5. Among the dead is one Lebanese soldier. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad vows to cleanse his country of extremism the day after a suicide bomber kills more than 45 people, including a key pro-regime Sunni, in a mosque. U.S. President Barack Obama urges both sides to resume negotiations in Palestine and Israel, but also pushes the Palestinians to drop a long-standing demand that Israel halt illegal settlement construction. The death toll from 3 days of fighting in the northern city of Tripoli has risen to 5. Among the dead is a Lebanese soldier. The Lebanese army continues to take security measures in the tense neighborhoods of Tripoli, mainly in Jabal Muhsin and Bab al-Tabbani, including raids in areas where the gunmen are located. The army says that on late Thursday that the gunmen used light and medium weapons in addition to hand grenades. It warns armed men that it would deal firmly with all sources of gunfire and urged citizens to abide by the security measures taken by the army to preserve their safety. The Tripoli gunfight erupted when a soldier was wounded along with his brother after gunmen entered the state hospital in the area of Al-Kubbe and opened fire at him. Maronite Patriarch Bashar al-Assad is inviting Christian leaders to consult on a hybrid vote law in the latest attempt to break the month-long deadlock over a new electoral system that threatens to scuttle the June 9th polls. Patriarch Rai is supposed to bring the Maronite leaders together in Kirkuk this evening to discuss a hybrid electoral law proposed by Speaker Nabih Berri. Now, Nabih Berri's sources have denied reports that the planned meeting, grouping Aoun, Jaja, and an LF representative perhaps, Kataib Chief Amin Jumayel and Marada movement leader MP Sulaiman Fanjiye, would take place later today. Libyan Prime Minister Najib Mikati, who also attended the Pope's inaugural ceremony, held meetings with Rai in Rome to discuss proposal for a new electoral law. Local media has called it the Rome Agreement. The three were reported to have agreed on a 3-point plan to break the electoral impasse. Lebanon's cabinet has referred a divisive draft wage hike bill for the public sector to Parliament in a move that could end a month-long of strike action and protests by teachers and civil servants. Launched on February 19th, the open-ended strike, coupled with daily protests, have crippled work at government buildings and public schools. The cabinet postponed discussions on creating an elections committee tasked with overseeing the upcoming parliamentary polls, as well as extending the terms of both the head of the internal security forces and the Lebanese army. The cabinet's decision was announced by Acting Information Minister Wael Abu Faoud after an 8-hour session chaired by President Michel Sulaiman at the Babda Palace. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has vowed to cleanse his country of what he called extremism a day after a suicide bomber killed more than 45 people, including a key pro-regime Sunni cleric in a mosque. The attack was also condemned by the opposition, who raised the possibility that the regime was behind the deadly blast at the Imam Mosque in Damascus on Thursday night. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights put the death toll at 46, saying that around 15 of the wounded were in critical condition and the toll was likely to rise. The attack comes as heavy fighting rages across Syria, and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon says the United Nations is going to investigate whether chemical weapons have been used in the conflict. In echoes of sectarian violence in Iraq, state media said the attack was carried out by a suicide bomber who blew himself up after entering the central Damascus mosque, where Bouti was addressing religious students. Negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians finally topped the agenda on the second day of U.S. President Barack Obama's visit to the region, as he urged both sides to resume negotiations, but also pushed the Palestinians to drop a long-standing demand that Israel halt illegal settlement construction in the occupied West Bank. Speaking in Ramallah with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, he urged the Palestinian Authority to drop its focus on settlements and return to talks without preconditions.
Given the demographics west of the Jordan River, the only way for Israel to endure and thrive as a Jewish and democratic state is through the realization of an independent and viable Palestine. Israelis must recognize that continued settlement activity is counterproductive to the cause of peace, and that an independent Palestine must be viable with real borders that have to be drawn. And put yourself in their shoes. Look at the world through their eyes. It is not fair that a Palestinian child cannot grow up in a state of their own. Their entire lives with the presence of a foreign army that controls the movements, not just of those young people, but their parents, their grandparents, every single day. Arab states must adapt to a world that has changed. The days when they could condemn Israel to distract their people from a lack of opportunity or government corruption or mismanagement, those days need to be over. Now's the time for the Arab world to take steps towards normalizing relations with Israel. Because of the cooperation between our governments, we know that there remains time to pursue a diplomatic resolution. That's what America will do, with clear eyes, working with a world that's united and with the sense of urgency that's required. But Iran must know this time is not unlimited. And I've made the position of the United States of America clear. Iran must not get a nuclear weapon. This is not a danger that can be contained. And as President, I've said all options are on the table for achieving our objectives. America will do what we must to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran.
Israelis voiced mixed feelings after hearing Obama delivering the keynote address, in which he appealed directly to the Israeli people to put themselves in the shoes of stateless Palestinians and recognize the Jewish settlement activity in occupied territory hurts prospects for peace.
The Obama speech was a good speech, but I think in the bottom line, Obama is the president of the USA, not the president of Israel. We need to trust Benjamin Netanyahu and the prime minister, and we need to trust us. We need to decide which road we go, and not the Americans, not Obama.
Why give this speech in Israel to an audience that applauds for any prospects of peace, instead of going to Ramallah and giving that speech in Ramallah and seeing their response to any initiative of peace? We know what their answer is. We reheard it today, and therefore I completely don't see what was the relevance of the whole speech.
I must say I admire the ability of President Obama to acknowledge his own mistakes in his first years in office and to correct them, to change course. I think he understood the problem is not Israel, and the problem is not the settlements, but the intransigence of the Palestinians. I think President Obama understood that the Palestinians will not agree to the existence of Israel as a Jewish state, and therefore a final status solution here is impossible.
Coming up next, officials say a Marine killed a male and female colleague in a base in Virginia before committing suicide. The details when we return. Welcome back. Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood says that it will defend its headquarters against protests if necessary, raising the possibility of a confrontation at a demonstration planned in Cairo. Anti-Brotherhood protesters clashed with riot police wielding tear gas outside the building earlier this week, the latest burst of street unrest in a country still struggling to install law and order since its 2011 revolution. In a tense press conference in which journalists confronted senior Muslim Brotherhood leaders over accusations that private security guards have attacked members of the press, the group said it would use all means to protect its property. The Brotherhood also announced that it had legalized its status as an NGO in an effort to put an end to arguments that the group was considered illegal under Egyptian law. Armed Bedouin tribesmen in Egypt's Sinai abducted 2 tourists, an Israeli man and a Belgian woman, as they were traveling between 2 beach resorts. The gunmen intercepted the tourist car and forced them into their truck. Officials said that the tourists had been traveling between the southern resort of Taba on the border with Israel and Dahab. Such hostage takings, which usually last for no longer than 48 hours, began in the restive Sinai Peninsula after an uprising in early 2011 forced out President Hosni Mubarak and battered his security services. The kidnappers are Bedouin who want to trade the hostages for jailed tribesmen. And the Cypriot parliament is set to reconvene later to debate a raft of government crisis measures after lawmakers adjourned a late Thursday sitting, saying they needed more time for consultation. Even those measures look likely to fall short of a promised Plan B to raise the 5.8 billion euros demanded by the EU in return for a 10 billion euro lifeline from the EU and the International Monetary Fund. The European Union gave Cyprus till Monday to raise the billions of euros it needs to secure an international bailout or face a collapse of its financial system that could push it out of the euro currency zone. In a sign it was at least preparing for the worst, the Cypriot government sought powers to impose capital controls to stem a flood of funds leaving the island if there is no deal before banks reopen following the week's shutdown. For news around the world in brief, now China's new leader Xi Jinping arrives in Moscow on his first foreign trip as president to cement ties between the two countries by inking a raft of energy and investment accords. The deal expected to be signed between Xi and his counterpart Vladimir Putin will see Russia ramp up oil supplies to China, which is the world's biggest energy consumer. The Chinese leader, who arrived for a three-day visit, chose Russia for his first trip abroad after China completed a power handover, which will see Xi preside over the world's second-largest economy for the next decade. Nicolas Sarkozy's political allies rallied around the former French president to denounce a judicial decision to place him under investigation in a political party funding case as unfair and unjustified. Lawyer Thierry Herzog took to the airwaves from daybreak to say Sarkozy was in a fighting mood and would appeal the decision by a judge in the southwestern city of Bordeaux to move against him on allegations of abuse of weakness in a 2000 case involving elderly L'Oréal heiress Liliane Bettencourt. The Ivory Coast soccer squad trained in Abidjan the eve of their World Cup qualifier against Gambia without Didier Drogba, who wasn't selected. However, coach Sabri Lamouchi said earlier in the week that the former captain is still in his thoughts and just needs to return to top form. 35-year-old former Chelsea forward has inspired the Ivorian national side to become the top-ranked team in Africa with 57 goals in 94 appearances. Some recent performances have disappointed the fans. A deposit of highly concentrated rare earth minerals crucial in making high-tech electronic products has been found near a remote Japanese island in the Pacific Ocean. A team from Tokyo University and the Japan Agency for Marine Earth Science and Technology said samples taken near Minamitori Island, 2,000 kilometers south of Tokyo, were 20 times more concentrated than deposits found in China, which currently provides more than 90% of global supplies. And officials say a Marine killed a male and female colleague at a base in Virginia before committing suicide. Base spokesman Lieutenant Augustine Sullivan says it began around 11 p.m. with a shooting that killed one at a Marine base, Quantico. The suspect then barricaded himself, prompting a standoff with authorities. They eventually entered the barracks and found a second victim dead, along with a suspect from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Performer Tony Bennett doesn't think Amy Winehouse's life was tragic. He believes the singer, who died at age 27, lived a complete life because she was able to achieve her goal, becoming a respected musician. Bennett, who's 86 years old, was honored at New York's Waldorf Astoria Hotel, where attendees included Winehouse's father, mother and brother, her ex-boyfriend Reg Travis, Harry Belafonte, Jennifer Hudson, Sean Lennon, and producers Mark Ronson and Salam Remy, who was also honored. Winehouse died in 2011 from accidental alcohol poisoning. Though troubled, she was a critical darling and earned 5 Grammy Awards for her sophomore album, Back to Black. The foundation established in her name assists disadvantaged youth. And on that note, we end our bulletin for today. Let me remind you of our top stories. The death toll from 3 days of fighting in the northern city of Tripoli rises to 5. Among the dead is a Lebanese soldier. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad vows to cleanse his country of extremism a day after a suicide bomber kills more than 46 people, including a key pro-regime Sunni cleric in a mosque. And U.S. President Barack Obama urges both sides to resume negotiations, but also pushes the Palestinians to drop a long-standing demand that Israel halt illegal settlement construction. Those are your Friday headlines live on Future Television in Beirut. I'm Yumna Naufal, wishing you a very nice weekend.
14 أذار حتى نحقق الحرية التي ننشدها جميعا.